Hi, everyone. I'm David Aragona, and this is the July 27th edition of Horses to Watch, where we look back at some trips from the past week, trying to find horses that encountered adversity or poor trips or rides in the recent starts and might be worth betting back when they run in the future. This week, I've got 4 races to look back at from week 2 at Saratoga. 5 days in this racing week, unlike 4 from the first week at Saratoga. So we're going to try to talk about horses from each day. I've got 4 replays in total. We're going to start by going all the way back to last Wednesday, July 21st, and look at race 8. This is a New York bred optional claiming $40,000 optional tag, non-winners of 2 other than going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. And I'm going to do something I don't normally do and look at the head-on of this entire race. Let's break these runners from the gate, and we're going to focus on the number 10, 3 Outlaws, who was one of the favorites in this race. And I'll spoil it ahead of time. 3 Outlaws achieves a poor finish in this race, but sometimes you see a pretty consistent horse who throws in a clunker and you wonder why. And sometimes looking back at the trip is the reason why and reveals why the horse ran so poorly. And in this race, as they move down the backstretch, this head-on shot gives a really good view of how much turf course these horses are kicking up as they run down the backstretch. Look at those big claws that the horses, especially towards the back of the pack, are picking up. So this is definitely a yielding course. And the number 10 horse who you see here, 3 Outlaws, he just never gets any cover or is able to save any ground in this race. And as they come around the turn here, there he is in the 5 path. That's just a trip that is never going to be successful on the turf. You want to save ground on any course that's going around a turn, but especially on these turf courses at Saratoga, you don't want to be anywhere outward of the 3 path. And he literally is 5 horses wide all the way around the turn. So that was just going to spell doom for him right from the start. And he just never gets inside after that. He's out in the center of the course. Really, this was not a race where horses were able to make up a lot of ground. Just they couldn't really get traction or pick up over this yielding course as they kick up those big clods of turf behind them. So I just think this is a legitimate excuse for 3 Outlaws, who finishes 6th in this race, never really launches a run, loses by, I think, 8 or 9 lengths. I would just draw a line through this when he runs next time, because this is a horse who had been pretty consistent for Rob Actress coming into this race. And I think the turf condition, coupled with the fact that he was so wide around the far turn, just means that he didn't get to put forth a true effort in this spot. So I would look for 3 Outlaws as an interesting horse at this level when he comes back next time. Let's move on to Thursday's card, July 22nd, and we're going to take a look at the last race of the day here. Actually, the next 3 races we're going to talk about are all the last races of the day. This one was race 10 from Thursday. It's a New York bred maiden claiming 40,000, going 5.5 furlongs on the turf, the same distance as the race we just looked at. Let's break them from the gate, and I'm going to focus on the number 1, Path Less Taken. This is a first-time starter for trainer Tom Morley, who didn't take that much money. Junior Alvarado is riding him, and you see right here, he breaks fine, maybe a length behind the horse who's in front, and he tries to get into a pretty good position here, and he's going to slot in behind the leaders, saving ground along the inside. Really, things go fine for this horse for about the first 3 furlongs of this race. And I'll just mention, this is a son of Bellamy Road, who does have plenty of turf pedigree on the bottom side. Even though he's by Bellamy Road out of the Congrats mare, that doesn't really say turf, but there is plenty of turf pedigree in the female family. So I think he's one that does have some hope on this surface. But you're going to see what happens here coming to the quarter pole that really takes away any chance he had in this race. He's trying to follow the number 2 Orma into the race. And what happens is, even though Orma was a 5-to-1 shot in this race, she comes up totally empty coming into the stretch, and Path Less Taken is trying to angle outside of that horse right here, but you're going to see gets totally stopped in traffic right about here as Orma comes out into the path, and the jockey, Junior Alvarado, has to basically stop riding Path Less Taken, and the whole field's going to come together right here, and he's just not able to ride Path Less Taken for about the final 3/16 of a mile of this race. You see everybody else is whipping and driving, and there's Junior on the left of your screen, who's just basically standing up in the stirrups, easing this horse out of the race, and he's going to cross the wire last. But this is a horse who I think could have done a whole lot better if he'd been able to get a clear path through the stretch and actually been ridden out through the wire. Not sure how much ability this horse actually has. This race didn't come up that fast, but given that it was just his debut and encountered so much traffic coming through the stretch, I think this is one that you do want to give a second chance to when he returns next time out. Let's move on to a race from Saturday's card. This is July 24th. Again, the last race of the day, race 11 this day. This is a New York bred allowance, non-winners of 1 other than, going a mile and a 16th on the turf course. Let's break these runners from the gate, and this is a trip where the horse I'm going to highlight, the number 3, Mapoka, doesn't have really any traffic trouble or do anything particularly wrong in this race. But what happens is she just encounters herself in a really negative race flow for a horse that wants to be forwardly placed. The big favorite in this race is the number 7, My Lips Are Sealed. And that horse is going to be very aggressive going into the first turn, along with the number 12 on the outside. And these three just kind of get into a duel going quickly into that clubhouse turn. And David Cohen, who's riding Mapoka, is going to try to back her off the pace a little bit. But you can see these three horses have already opened up a big gap on the rest of the field. And I should note, we talked about on Wednesday's card in Saratoga how the turf had been yielding. And there was given the turf course throughout the rest of the days this week. So that 23-2 opening quarter that you see posted in the upper left-hand portion of the screen, that is really fast for these horses over a course that still had some give in it. And you see David Cohen is able to get Mapoka back into that third spot, but she's still pretty close to that fast pace. And I like to look at the time form US pace figures in this situation to see how fast these horses were going relative to other races and relative to the final time. And the opening quarter and half mile of this race got time form US pace figures of 147 and 147 for a race that gets a final time number of 96. So that is just an extremely fast pace for a race that only gets a 96 speed figure. And here's Mapoka ranging up outside of that heavy favorite, number 7, and she's actually going to put that horse away, even though she was in the teeth of that hot pace throughout. And the other horse who was contesting the pace, she's already last at this point. But Our Lips Are Sealed, who's on the rail, she's going to start fading right here, and Mapoka's going to forge past her and try to even fend off these closers that are ranging up outside of her. And Mapoka's going to finish a good 6 lengths ahead of that heavy favored number 7, finishing 4th here. All in all, I think this was a really good effort from a horse who basically beat the pace dynamics of the race and was only out of the money because they went so fast up front in the early going. It's worth noting that Mapoka, in her race coming into this, her first start off the claim for Linda Rice, before this was her second start off the claim, she had also gotten a bad trip in that race, as that was one dominated on the inside, and she'd gotten a wide trip at Belmont Park. So I now think in both races for Linda Rice, Mapoka's form's a little dirtied up, and if she returns at this level next time in a similar spot, I think she's going to be pretty tough to beat, as long as there's not so much pace signed on. Let's finish things up with a race from Sunday's card at Saratoga, July 25th. Again, final race of the day, the nightcap, race 10. This is a claiming $20,000 race going a mile and 1/8 on the main track. Let's break these horses from the gate, and I want to focus on the number 2, Easy Shot. Now, you can't see him right away because he breaks a little bit slowly inside that horse in the lime green. He's the one in the pink and black silks on the inside towards the back of the pack, and there's not a particularly quick pace in this race. They're kind of slowing things down in the front end, so not great that Easy Shot breaks towards the back of the pack, but watch what happens here. Jose Lezcano is riding him. He's trying to get him to settle into this spot about third to last behind these first 2 flights of runners, but you can see Easy Shot wants no part of it. He's going to start dragging Jose up into a more forward position, and he's moving really quickly past horses coming around the clubhouse turn here, trying to go up to challenge the leaders. And as they move on to the backstretch, watch Jose Lezcano's body language on the number 2 compared to everybody else. They're moving pretty easily. The jockeys have the reins relaxed, just kind of sitting on their horses, not really doing anything. And there's Jose Lezcano having a really tough time trying to just get Easy Shot back off these 2 front runners. His head is straight up in the air. There's Jose leaning back in the saddle, trying to get this horse to settle, but he's fighting the rider the entire way. And when you're going a demanding mile and 1/8 distance on the main track at Saratoga, you don't want to be fighting your rider for a furlong, let alone 5 furlongs of a mile and 1/8 race. And this horse just never settles, moving all the way down the backstretch. If you go back and watch the head-on of the replay, you can see really clearly just how much Jose Lezcano is fighting this horse down the backstretch of this race. And finally, about here, around the 3/8 pole, he gives Easy Shot his head, and he's going to pretty easily range up and pass the leaders coming to the quarter pole. And it looks briefly like he's going to go on to win this race, but keep in mind how much energy he was exerting fighting his rider for the early portion of this race. So the pace was relatively slow. Others have way more energy conserved by the time they get into the stretch, and Jose Lezcano was going to ask Easy Shot for another burst of speed here, and he briefly gives it, but he's going to flatten out coming to the 8th pole. Others just have a little bit more stamina left in the tank at this point, and they're going to run past him. But it's not like Easy Shot completely falls apart here. He's going to hang on for 4th and be a pretty game 4th at that, considering how much energy he exerted making that middle premature move into the race. So this is a horse that hadn't really shown these tendencies in the past. I don't know what was bothering him in this race, why he was so difficult to handle, but I think he's one, if they can get him a little more settled next time, maybe they'll make a slight equipment change, like taking the blinkers off. I think he's a horse that can do really well at this level because he handled the mile and 1/8 distance, just didn't get the right trip for a horse like him. So those are all the horses to watch for this week. Remember, if you want to follow these horses, you can add them to your horse watch on DRF.com. Just go under horse watch and you can add them to a list, get email notifications when they run back, have workouts or entered in the future. That's how I like to follow the horses that I highlight on this show. So thanks for tuning in this week, and make sure to catch future episodes of Horses to Watch on upcoming Wednesdays.